Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Ives number LG13 USP. They call it a lock guard. It's a latch protector is what it is. Lock guard, certainly. This is a piece of steel that's prime coat plated. Pardon me, prime coated. It's painted. It's not plated. Prime coating is intended to be painted. Painted prime coat is what it's intended to be. And I like latch guards like this because they're effective and they don't necessarily overwhelm the door. Relatively petite in their footprint, ought to be able to give you adequate coverage over the strike lip area and the latch bolt area. And the LG13 is one of the members of a family of latch guards from Ives. There's information down below this video that will tell us the dimensional properties, designed for use on all 161 cylindrical type locks, monolocks and unilocks, meaning if you've got a bored hole in a door, a 2 1/8 hole or something like that, this is probably going to be very good for you. No exposed fasteners on the face of the unit. Those mounting studs are welded onto the backside. Unique design provides maximum security, virtually eliminating the opening between the door and frame at the latch point. This is 13 gauge would be if it was made of stainless steel, which they are available in stainless, or 12 gauge when it's made of steel, such as this one. They wouldn't prime coat a stainless based item, so this would be steel based, as evidenced by the magnet. The caliper tells us that the material thickness is 0.11 inch. 0.11 inch material thickness. So there is a link below this video to a document called Product Brochure, where it will allow us to review all of the different latch guards from Ives. And as I look at this, the LG1, the LG7, very typical, very common latch protectors. And those are generally the ones that you're going to see on commercial installations. 11.5 inch or so tall, about 3.5 inch wide. Different finishes that they're available. Of course, satin chrome, stainless steel is the most common. But the LG10 on page 1, that's basically the same as this unit, except that it's a bit wider, but it's taller. So the LG10 is a very common unit and may be more appropriate for your installation if you want to cover more of that seam, okay, more of the seam between the edge of the door and frame. The LG11 is fairly uncommon, but you could experience good success by using that item. That's intended for aluminum storefront doors with latch type locks or doors equipped with electric strikes. So be mindful that hole in that plate is going to be intended for a cylinder that you'd see on an aluminum storefront. The LG12 is going to be literally this item, except that it's 9.5 inch tall, same width, 1.5 inch. The LG13 and the LG14. The LG14 is would be very appropriate for you if you were doing work on, well, with a mortise lock, is where the LG14 would come. When you're dealing especially with mortise locks with escutcheon trim, or possibly an exit device, maybe a mortise style exit device that has escutcheon trim on it, but be mindful of the dimensional requirements of that unit being less than 3.5 inch. Also on each of these other latch guards are referenced the finishes that they're available in. And those part numbers also are expressed as, they're expressed as a US number. This would be USP, also known as 600. 600 means prime coat, but 600 means made of steel. They have 606 and 612 listed there, which are deceptive because those two BHMA finish codes mean the base material is brass bronze, and that material is definitely not going to be made of brass or bronze. There's just no chance that they are. So, however, I'm looking at the extended description and it clearly states that it can be made of brass material. Um, I'm going to have to retract everything I just said. I would never have guessed they would make a latch guard in a solid brass base material. They do. Those latch guards would probably look quite elegant as well on that LG7. LG1 would be that part number for that. So the LG1 is going to give you a frame separation advantage where there's a pin on the back side of it. So if you try to insert a crowbar and spread the door and frame open, that pin that's drilled and resides within the face of the frame will prevent the spreading of that open, is the design intent there. So the rest, that entire catalog is helpful, my guffaw aside of base material. Then there's a link to the installation instructions, and those are certainly included, and let's go over that now. It gives you a dimension, the A dimension. Check this dimension for clearance before drilling the holes. And what they're saying there on that A dimension is that you want to be sure that when you install this onto the door and frame, that the bolt and the finish washer that's included will not interfere with the stop of the frame. Okay? And see dimension A on reverse side. So what is dimension A? Oh, it's on the template, forgive me. Page 2 of the installation instructions show what dimension A would be, and we're looking at the LG13, which is over here in this column, and dimension A is going to be 3/8 of an inch. Okay, that's your dimension A. So that's going to tell you from the edge of the door to where you are attaching these bolts, from the edge of the door to the center line of where the bolts will be, that's your 3/8 of an inch. And this portion obviously overlaps the face of the frame, and it has that offset that's there to accommodate the fact that hollow metal frames are, as a rule, inset ever so slightly. You know, if you ran your hand over the face of the door and frame, the door is not flush. In aluminum storefront, they can be flush, but in hollow metal work, they're not generally. So those are pushed in to the frame about 3/32 of an inch, and that's what the offset here would account for. Okay, 3/8 of an inch over is what you're going to be on that template, and looking at that, it'll give the rest of the dimensional properties, and let's take a look at that all right now. All right, overall height 7 inch according to the template. And that is indeed the case. Overall width, about 1.5 inches. Okay. These screws with the finish washers are intended to go obviously on the inside of the door and thread back into the welded on lug. 1.75 inch thick doors would be typical and common for this. If you needed to do something thicker, you could buy longer bolts, or thinner. I suppose you can cut these down. The rest of the dimensional properties that are on the template are just elementary. That will you can review that information. They do state that that dimple is 1/4 inch, and that the height for that strike area is about that 4 1/4 inch. And now they say 3 3/4. I would. It's closer to 4 inch, but 3 3/4 is what's on the template. I'm measuring 4 inch in this space right here. Okay. Frankly, if you have an exterior door that swings out in an alley or somewhere that's not clearly visible, a latch protector is the least expensive insurance that you can buy, because generally what happens is you'll have folks who will see a latch protector and they'll just move on. It's not the low-hanging fruit when you've got security hardware on the door, and that's where you're going to find latch protectors. And if you have that sort of scenario where you see maybe some tampering or some damage that someone's been trying to work on that part of the door and frame, get a latch protector immediately, if not more measures, to help mitigate the potential problem. But back to the first page of the installation instructions, you've got step A. Step 2 is to vertically center it. Okay, so you're going to want to be mindful that the lip of the strike plate will reside within this space here, and they're showing you, that you should make that equal. Okay, step 3, be sure to drill those holes perfectly vertical. Mark them and drill them. If your door is beveled, be mindful of hooking your tape measure on the inside over in 3/8 and then on the opposite side over in 3/8. Those distances would be very different, and the dimension A they're giving would be on the pull side. So be mindful of that. Don't hook that tape measure on the inside. You're going to be about 1/8 of an inch too long if that's how you measure it on the inside. Step 3 does tell us about those holes being vertical and using a triangle square like they have. There is a very useful tool for doing that sort of work. And indeed, note number 2 in step 3 does tell you about deducting that 1/8 of an inch. It's not quite an eighth of an inch, but it's so incredibly close that it's basically 1/8 of an inch. Step 4, drill 5/16 diameter hole to be drilled on the interior side, and that would be appropriate for these 1/4 bolts that are here. The exterior side, I did not see what they called out for the hole diameter. I don't see where they're giving us the hole diameter on the exterior for these studs, but the caliper tells us that it's 0.346. 0.346, so I'd probably be tempted to drill a 3/8 of an inch hole for this. Let's see if it's on. 5/16 would indeed be too small. Yeah, I don't see where the stud is called out, but 3/8 is what I would drill. I'm sure it's on this page somewhere. I'm just missing it. Step 4, 5/16 on the inside. You're not going to be able to drill that through the door. It'll be too small for the outside. And then, of course, finish off your installation. But you do want to make sure, again, before you install this material, where you're installing it onto the door and frame, that this will not make contact with the face of the stop when the door closes. You want to be able to be sure to have that clearance. If you're not going to have that clearance, you'll need certainly either different fasteners or maybe a different latch protector by another company who makes a head of a bolt much shorter in projection than this, which can be accommodated. So be mindful of that. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Ives products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. I'm partial to Ives, and it's because they have a name and a product line that is very familiar within the door hardware industry, a name that's trusted and tried, and you'll generally find industry acceptance of the name Ives when it comes to their trim and auxiliary hardware. If you have any questions on the LG13 in a USP finish or any other Ives product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.